This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masterengencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Hey, welcome everyone. Larry Bailey here with Mortgage Workflow Partners. How are we doing today? Today is June 22nd, 2023, and we are going to talk today about Consumer Connect and topics for the day, creative ways to use the Consumer Connect website versus widgets. We're going to talk a lot about that. And then also with regards to using the Consumer Connect the same way, and this might be a bold statement, but the same way that Quicken used Rocket. And I'm going to talk a lot about the idea of and the concept of marketing versus reality in terms of technology. So before we get going anywhere along these lines, always thanks to those that are showing up live. As a reminder, this is being live streamed out to a couple different places. We're going to, starting with July, we're going to see a change into how to access these replays and these recordings over into the Mastering Encompass community. So if you're not part of that community, feel free to follow the links that are all over our page on LinkedIn, or you can just go to masterengencompass.com and join the community. It's free. And we're going to be adding many, many more resources there to making sure that we continue our passion and our promise to educate you and make you have a much better day with regards to Encompass. And if you're not the administrator, that's A-okay. If you're in sales or processing or underwriting, we're going to speak to you as well and help you along this mission to leveraging the Encompass platform because it's one I've used since 2005-06, depending on who you talk to. Made a ton of money on it, and I've also helped a ton of other companies leverage Encompass to have them make a ton of money. Sometimes it's not just about money, though. Sometimes it's honestly just about not going into a stressful situation, managing how your Encompass works. So if you heard in the background, Lily agrees we should keep on moving forward here. And I've got Encompass on screen, but before we get into Consumer Connect, into the topics, does anyone have any questions? Amy, I did fix it so you can chat to everybody, so it's not just private messages.
I saw that. I was very excited to see that. Thank you.
I'm learning. In any event, does anyone have any questions from either Tuesday's topic about Consumer Connect or anything like that? And so Tuesday, if anyone recalls, Tuesday we really focused in on explaining Consumer Connect and really explaining the differences between the base sites and widgets. And what I wanted to really focus on here was the ability to come in and stop sharing timer display. Okay, so maybe that'll work a little bit differently. So now you can kind of see me. But the ability to really go in. So if you're not on Consumer Connect or you're not using it and you want to explore it more, if you go to your homepage, provided you have access on the right-hand side, you'll see this Manage Consumer Connect portal. And that Consumer Connect portal is going to spin up into your native browser, whatever that is. I happen to use Chrome. And you probably get the best experience out of Chrome using Consumer Connect, both as an admin and a user and a borrower. That's typically where most people see their best experience. I will say that one thing that Consumer Connect continues to be, in my opinion, it needs to be improved or addressed somehow. I'm not quite sure how, because I'm not on that end. And I'm sure the folks at ICE are figuring this out. But with Consumer Connect, the only thing that's out there from a borrower experience is this cross-site third-party tracking. And so what that means in English is for borrowers, when they go here, to send them to e-consent or to send them a disclosure package or a closing package, there's a token in the email that they receive. And then within that token is to click it, it brings them to your Consumer Connect site. Now, if you're using a widget or you're using Consumer Connect site, the experience is the same, meaning that they still have to have the token pass from the email click over to the website, which is this cross-site tracking. So if you use, if you happen to use like an iPhone, like a lot of the world does, or you use Chrome, like a lot of the world does, both of these have native settings that disables cross-site tracking. So you need to make sure that you give your borrowers clear instructions on how to manage that properly. I've actually shot a couple of videos I've shared, but basically it's within the iPhone, it's within the Chrome settings as well. So when we go over into the Consumer Connect site, you typically land on home, and if you've created websites, you'll see them in Website Builder. Now, the part that's important here is the difference between the website and a widget is how this looks. So we know anything with a prefix of, anything with a, I should say, a suffix of .mymortgage-online.com, that means that you'll have the a website version. And so when you have a website version, what that means is that you can't do anything within your own website relevant for the actual Consumer Connect site. So if I were to come over here in a Website Builder, I can preview this, and basically it's going to preview this launch. It's going to launch this preview, and you would expect this to work like any other website. You know, it goes, and this is the entire frame is everything that is controlled under the ICE technology. All the branding down here, all the logoing. You can do your best to make it look yours, but ultimately it will always be ICE's environment. And so that's why on Tuesday's call, and really for everybody, I always talk about making sure that you focus on widgets. So what the heck is a widget relevant to our conversation? And a widget means you come over to this kebab. So I'm remembering what these things are called now. But you go over to the kebab and you say, add your borrower widgets to your site. And this is, I kind of touched on this on Tuesday, but I'm just going to use, you know, test let's go, sorry, HTTP test.mysite.com, right? So that's my website is mysite.com. I've got my subdomain here. I'm going to select my LAR, and I'm going to select have a problem because I don't have folders enabled. So that sucks. So let's go over and fix that problem for that loan officer not having access to those loan folders. This is what you get for not having stuff set up in the beginning. So obviously we want to go over into user groups and go over into all users and make sure we've got in loans that we've got all of that. And let's see if that's going to fix our problem. Sorry about that, gang. So let's go ahead and refresh and see if this works. So where I'm headed here is making sure that we can create a widget site. Let's go ahead and select this first. Hey, it worked. So again, https://test.mysite.com and create my widget. And so what it's doing right now is it's creating this widget site, and it's creating code in the background that you're going to give to either yourself if you're a web developer, or give to your web developer team. And again, you know you're in the widget site area because it shows your domain. Now, this is really, really important, because if you create this domain and it's really just a test, please be sure to not let your web development team start developing off of this widget code, because you can't change it afterwards. If you create any workflows over here, it's important to remember that workflows for widget sites are only good for workflows in widget sites, meaning in English, if you're moving from Web Center or Consumer Connect workflows over into widget workflows, they are not compatible. You're going to have to recreate them. So it's a little bit annoying, but it's important to be aware of. that motion. If you do create a test widget site and you create your workflows to do your testing, and now you want to make sure, now you want to launch for real, you can create a new widget site, and then you can move your workflows over into the other widget site. So everything else is the same. If you're used to using Consumer Connect with workflows, I'm not going to bore you and go through all that. If you're not used to using workflows in Consumer Connect, please explore. I'm going to touch on this before the end, and my context here is how you can use Consumer Connect like Quicken used Rocket. I'll explain that in a second. What I want to show you though here is that when you create this widget site, it's this icon right here that you're going to copy your code snip. And this code snip is specific to this workflow, specific to this loan app recipient. So if I copy this code, I'm going to launch my code editor. This one happens to be Notepad++. And so this code in here, I'll make this a little bit bigger for anyone to see, but this code is really nice because it gives your the JavaScript to plug right into the page. Again, this is not an iframe, this is JavaScript, and it identifies the workflow ID, and it identifies the site ID that it's tied to the Consumer Connect site. So you can play with this if you're a developer. You can play with this a little bit to not only automatically update your workflow ID based upon actions, but you can also deal with how you want the visual representation of that code snip to react on your site. Now, if I want to come over and modify, if I want to come over here and replicate this, so this is where you can replicate from the current site, or you can select another site to replicate from. So similar to kind of think about like pipeline views, like when you're in admin pipeline views and you want to copy pipeline view from one persona to another, it's the same thing in here. I can carry workflows from one site to another site. So it's extraordinarily helpful when you're trying to manage your workflows, especially if you've got different code snips, different widget sites that you're setting up for either different companies or different parts of your company, and you want to maintain those workflows between them. So I feel like I've been talking a lot and maybe getting a little bit too complicated, too quick. Does anyone have any questions that are on here? Again, we've got chat. If you have any questions as you're watching this, please ask them in the community. I'd be glad to talk about this more. But for those that are that joined me on the live event today, you guys okay? Anything you want me to go back over? Thumbs up. Okay, we're going to keep on trucking on that, so that's fine. So the next step is when I look at Consumer Connect, I can go literally, if you go out to the Connect login, right? So when I go to Consumer Connect login, like I can find them all over the place. Like literally you can find them. So I'll pick the first one because why not? Whoever this is. So it looks like Guarantee Mortgage something or other, and it's coming up, and you guys are very familiar with what that looks like. That's their login. And this is obviously, we know from the little logo down here, and we know from the experience that this is a Consumer Connect site. So we're going to go back, and it's with whoever this company is, GNTY. I don't know who they are. But the idea is that experience right there is what we want to try to avoid. When we go into apply, we want to make sure that borrowers are experiencing the application that we want them to. And so when you go in to edit this workflow, you don't have to ask anything. And you might say, well, Larry, what the hell are you talking about? It's an application. No, it's not just an application. It's a way for your borrowers to find you on the internet to tell you that they're interested in borrowing money. That's the purpose of this. It's always the purpose of Consumer Connect. It's generally speaking the purpose of any POS platform, but somewhere along the way in the last few years, several years, the idea of having a point of sale to be the most comprehensive, all-in-one, Swiss knife for everything has expanded out exponentially. And so you get companies that specialize in creating this POS to not only be the application, but also in some cases try to be the CRM. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think that there's benefits into having segregation of that activity. And the biggest reason why I say that is because, again, if we go to Quicken, for those that Quicken loans, if we go back in time, you go to Rocket Mortgage, right? And you got to pick on Quicken, you got to pick on Rocket because they just knocked it out of the park probably forever. This is all they're asking. They're not asking to create an account. They're not asking for anything. You're like, oh, well, I want to take some cash out. Cool. Next. Yeah, it's for a single family house. Next. And what we're seeing here, guys, is as this is happening to borrowers and consumers, what you're doing is they're feeding into a workflow. This is the moment. First name, last name. So if I go up and I enter, Joe Smith, next, and then now they're looking for an email address, next, I guarantee I just got an email. Guarantee it. They're gonna hit me for an abandoned application. This is kind of my point. Now they're asking me to create an account. I don't want to create an account. I'm going to abandon. So because I don't want to go any further. But this is kind of the way that you shouldn't try to make up your own path when it comes to high-level success on getting people on the phone. Now, one of the things that you can do in this workflow, of course, is you can come over and ask for all the information or no information. You can also come in here and change the language of what you want to ask. Recently, there was a situation where, somebody was a client we were launching out for their equity loans on their Consumer Connect site, and they were having problems with field 1109 for loan amount. And the reason why they were having problems with 1109 for loan amount was this is the loan amount for a purchase or refinance. This is a loan amount for a line of credit. And this is a loan amount for a cash out, I think is how it runs. So if you come into Purpose and you change this language, this has an effect on something like loan amount. So if you ever have struggled with trying to only show certain things, I'm right there with you. It can be very confusing when you see the same field ID with different labels. But what it's trying to teach you is, or what it's trying to communicate to you is that if you wanted to only show home equity line of credit, then only show that one. And you can change that field label to be whatever you want, but recognize that when you give this to your borrower, it's going to come into Encompass as a home equity line of credit as the purpose. So same thing goes for any of these down here. You can change these labels, but keep in mind that the values are going to travel to these fields in Encompass. That's why those field IDs are there. So it's the entire 1003. It's everything in this workflow, but that doesn't mean you have to keep it. So that was kind of my shtick on this with Rocket, is when you look at your own workflow, you can do this with Consumer Connect. You don't need a fancy site. You don't need a fancy POS. All I care about in lending is the person going something more than just the first page? How much information can I grab so I can get them to the right team member? All I need is a first name, and all I need is a phone number. If I get their email address, fantastic. But I'm going to get them on the phone. I'm going to send them text messages. If I get their email, I'm going to send them my contact information via email. You can do all of that straight through Consumer Connect, straight into Encompass. And guess what? I can do a crap ton of automation in Encompass. I can't do a damn piece of automation in my world, under my control, with outside technology, meaning outside POS providers. So it's another thing when, if you're an Encompass administrator and you're sitting there with your team, or you're in sales even, and you're sitting there with your company, and you're trying to pick what technology is best, maybe there's not a direct and all-encompassing right answer. Maybe part of your team needs to use, one type of POS because that's important, because they want to have that experience. But in a lot of cases, I find that we can spin up with mortgage workflow partners. We've got clients that are using Simple Nexus or Blend. Then they also use Consumer Connect for other parts. And that's what I would encourage you to do. It's kind of my whole point for today's event is, again, whether you're in sales or an executive team, or you're in administration, work with your company to exploit as much as possible of what you're paying for with ICE Mortgage technology. It doesn't mean you have to use it for everything. And it doesn't even mean you have to use it for much of anything, but you can use it. And keep in mind, as of now, at least, ICE is still offering hybrid e-close for free, for $0. Take advantage of that. And ICE continues to pour more and more resources into, making a lot of this technology work. If you don't like the Consumer Connect sites, I don't blame you. I want to get, I want every one of my clients off of these. I want them all on Widgets. And I know I showed in the last, on Tuesday, but for those that didn't see it, Westfield, if you want a great example of work that Mortgage Workflow Partners has completed, go over to westfieldbank.com and look at any one of these lending spots. All of these were all individual pages on Consumer Connect. It was a nightmare for the web team and the bank to maintenance all that. We transformed the entire platform into Consumer Connect using Widgets, and it's been an extraordinary success. So if we can help you with that, let us know, and I'll leave it open for questions, and then I'll end with some final thoughts. Close this out, and say goodbye to Rocket. I'm sure my phone and email is blowing up as we speak. Go get them, Rocket. See if you can get me. All right, so no questions on chat. Last thing I'll bring up is, again, in mortgage.community, as of July, we're going to be making some changes in how we're doing these meetings. I want to focus more and more information into the community. And so we're going to be making, again, some consolidations and changes. The most important part, I think, that we're focusing here on is we're going to be focusing in on helping team members, whether you're in sales or processing and underwriting, really understanding how to master your Encompass platform. Doesn't mean that you can control the customization of it, right? But there are really important, easy ways to be able to quickly move inside of Encompass. And we also want to try to help foster movement between positions. So maybe you're in sales and you want to get into processing, or maybe you're in processing, you want to get into underwriting, or underwriting, you want to get into sales. Who the heck knows? But we want to bring these positions together into a fluid conversation, into a collaborative one. Same thing for administration. So there's folks we've been hearing from that are new to the Encompass platform, and they want to grow and understand how to leverage it better and more. So we're going to be focusing in, again, on growing out the administrators space, and focusing in on those resources that are specific to administrators. So like custom input form examples, custom code examples, and ongoing settings review, especially with the 23.2 that's out. And the last thing I'll say is, as a reminder, if you're not getting consistently the emails from ICE for when these releases are getting updated, I would, of course, have you report that to ICE so you can figure out what's going on. But make sure you keep your release notes on speed dial here on favorites. So there's a June service pack coming out tonight, 22nd. There's also a release coming out for web version. And then there's also a release version coming out tonight for GSE. So if you're not getting those updates, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best to get them posted into the community. I have to do better, so I will continue to do better. But in the meantime, make sure you're always checking all the products that you're subscribing to. At the very least, you're subscribing to Encompass. You're subscribing to web version because you got to stay on web version. You're doing ECS, you're doing doc solution, and you're doing GSE. Like those are the ones that you're doing no matter what. So at least stay in touch with those manually if you're not getting the updates, and I'll do better on getting these updates into the community. And that's all I got for now. Unless we have any questions, anything anybody want to go over? And take yourself off mute, give yourself an update. And we do these on the podcast too. So if you go to masteringencompass.com, you'll see the links for the podcast, for the replays, and for the link to the community. If you know anybody else that can leverage the community and stay in touch with what we're doing, that's great. Feel free. You know, I know there's great communities that I helped create in the past that are chock full of information. I think that's wonderful. I also think it's important to keep the ball moving forward and getting resources staying current and updates staying current, and also sharing this information with a much more global community that includes for operational teams, which I don't think is being done very well with some other communities. So that's why we're doing it. So I guess that's it for now. Amy, Cheryl, Brian, Jolene, Katie, Maya, thank you for coming today. Appreciate the opportunity to answer any questions. Brian, do you have something to say, or no? You're good?
No, just wanted to thank you for doing this every time, Larry.
Yeah, I think next week we're going to be going over. Shoot, I'll put it in the notes. I actually forget. We had some good suggestions for next week to go. I think we're going to be getting into more of the loan file and going over. It was I think it was FHA. Some folks are getting into FHA that have never been in FHA before. And then earlier today, also there was we had a question about piggybacks. So how to deal with piggyback loans from how to do them and how they work and how the piggyback sync works and all that stuff. So I think that's probably something easy to go through that a lot of people need to know.
Hey, Larry, I just have a really quick question for
Yeah.
anybody else. This has just been bugging me. And I feel like I should know this, but I don't. You know how like when you need to find a field in Encompass and you can go to the tab forum and type it in and it tells you what it is, or you hover your mouse over and it's like, oh, this is pulling from field 1732.
Sure.
Where do I go to tell me on which page and where physically in Encompass field 1732 is? Like without my having to memorize what every single field stands for, is there a tool that will be like, oh, go to ERLA lender page?
Is it a standard form?
Just in general,
Well,
like
I'm asking really specific. Is it a standard field that you're looking for or a custom field? I think I said form, but standard field
any field ever.
Well, if it's a standard field, you can see that in the resource center. So do you know where to find that?
No, in the resource center, I don't. I just keep typing in where is this field, and then you just get a bunch of knowledge articles that aren't helpful. Ooh, how do I do it in there?
What was that, Brian?
It's not the system audit trail, but there's something in there it's kind of like Encompass's version of BizRule analyzer. I'm trying to think what it is. Bear with me here.
You're talking about the analysis tool, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a little bit different. If I could get my eyes and hands to coordinate on the screen, I'll get us logged in here. But when you go into the resource center and you go over into the field lookup tool, it'll actually tell you what input form. So if you go to the Encompass field lookup here, and then you go, Control G is where you can find the field and you can kind of go through it. But I think this is really what's being asked for, right?
Thank you. Yes, I knew there had to be just a thing somewhere that I just hadn't stumbled across yet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's where it's. Believe me, it's not a common question, and there's a lot of people will defer to plugins and things like that. The analysis tool in Encompass that
it's more for rules.
Yeah. It's just rules and stuff. So, but this is, as long as it's a standard field, it'll be right here.
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
It's awesome. glad I could help. I appreciate you coming today. All right, gang. That's it. We're out of time. Have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you out there. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks.